I'm Helen. She was standing on the threshold of our house, where John and I were creating memories of our young family. Snow quietly covered the street, and the light of the lanterns created a soft illumination, as if hiding secrets inside. And then, in that moment of calm, John's words broke the silence. "Treason, Helen," he said, his voice as cold as ice. "You have to leave." I stood there, bewildered and stunned. Treason? Where did he get such an idea? There was no room for cheating in my head. But John didn't even give me a chance to explain. The door closed in my face. Impotence seized me, and the frost penetrated to the bones. The longing in my heart grew with every step I took, taking me into the unknown. I saw John calmly returning to our warm nest through the window. What's happening? My parents lived not far from our house. On my way to their house, my plea for help was met only by a cold wind and the silence of the night. Despair seeped through my clothes, and I walked slowly, trying to warm up in my thoughts. Passing through the dark forest, I heard a slight rustle of branches and the rustle of snow. Suddenly, the figure of a stranger appeared in front of me. He was tall, and he was holding a blanket in his hands, as if he foresaw my needs. "It looks like you're suddenly homeless," he said, handing me a blanket. His voice was soft and comforting. "Thanks," I muttered, freezing hard. We exchanged names. His name was Daniel. He offered me an escort, and I decided to accept his offer. We were walking through the forest, and in the dark he told me his story. "Also went through a divorce," Daniel said. "Sometimes it feels like life is falling apart, and you don't know what to do next." His words sounded like he was reading my mind. I listened to his story, realizing that each of us has our own pain and secrets hidden behind external confidence. Daniel told about how he decided to start all over again, leaving the hustle and bustle of the city and finding peace in this place. We came to his house, which turned out to be modest but cozy. He asked me to stay with him for the night, and I agreed. The mysterious stranger Daniel, as it turned out, became my salvation on this cold winter night. Daniel, sitting across from me, began to tell his story. "My wife and I seemed to have everything: successful careers, a beautiful home, friends, and travel. But over time, our paths began to diverge. Work took up more and more of our time, and instead of talking, she preferred to look at the smartphone screen. We became like two strangers living under the same roof." I listened attentively to his story. Daniel's story seemed so close to mine. Family relationships might seem perfect, but inside they were collapsing. This stranger understood me better than anyone else. "And one day," Daniel continued, "I decided to change my life. We got divorced. I sold our house and moved here, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a difficult choice, but it made me happier." I thought about my situation and the decisions to be made. Daniel gave me not only shelter from the cold, but also an important realization. John's betrayal and his false accusations could not change my life if I did not make my own decision. "What are you planning to do?" Daniel asked me. I looked into the fire and, in response to his question, lit up with a new hope. "I'll start all over again, just like you, Daniel. My life is just beginning here." In the morning, I left Daniel's house, leaving him words of gratitude and a promise that I would return when I was ready. Kindly borrowing an old car from him, I headed back to what had once been my house with John. The road seemed endless, and thousands of questions were spinning in my head. I needed to understand what had happened and what steps to take next. When I returned, my house was empty. Mark, then John, is gone. There was silence in the rooms, and all that remained of our years together was just a memory. Nevertheless, I decided to act. First of all, I visited a lawyer and learned about my rights in marriage. It turned out that John had left me some property, and I was entitled to part of the joint savings. With confidence in the law and Daniel's support, I decided to go back to John and try to figure out what happened. I found him in a local bar, and when he saw me, he expressed surprise and fear in his eyes. We sat down at a table, and the conversation began, which was a long-awaited puzzle solving. John admitted that he accused me of cheating only as an excuse to get away from our troubled family life, in which he himself continuously cheated on me. Months passed after I returned to our house, and we began to rebuild our relationship. I saw how John tried to be the best husband and father for our daughter. At first glance, everything seemed fine, but something in his behavior caught the eye. The remarks became clearly not indifferent. The smiles began to look fake. I saw his frequent phone conversations, which he quickly ended when I approached. Unexpected nights spent out of the house have become the norm. I felt that something unremarkable was hiding behind this whole picture of family happiness. My suspicions began to grow, and one day, when John left for work, I decided to investigate his secrets. In his phone, I found answers that unexpectedly finally revealed the picture. There have been text messages and calls from a woman named Laura since the beginning of autumn, long before he kicked me out of the house. They were full of kind words and promises to meet. My heart ached. The husband who accused me of treason was treacherous himself. I was torn between feelings of resentment and vulnerability. When John came home, I decided to confront him with the truth. His face was contorted with fear when I showed him his own messages and calls. "You accused me of cheating, and you cheated on me?" I asked, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. John confessed. His story was dark and deserved condemnation. He met Laura a few months before he kicked me out of the house. At the time of my exile, their relationship was in full swing, and he wanted to get rid of me in order to be with her. Long weeks passed in thought and tears. I couldn't just forget what he had done, and my feelings fluctuated between anger and regret. Our marriage was on the verge of collapse. Supported by friends and family, I decided to separate from John in order to understand what I really want and what would be best for our daughter. I moved in with my parents, and my days were filled with searching for inner peace and introspection. John, realizing his mistakes, began to persistently apologize and ask for forgiveness. He understood that his betrayal was unacceptable and hurt our family. He started attending therapy to sort out his own problems and shortcomings. We continued to communicate and try to find a way to a possible reconciliation, but we understood that the path to restoring our relationship would be difficult and long. Together with the therapist, we considered possible options for our future. After months of reflection and discussion, we made the difficult decision to divorce. Our marriage was seriously damaged by infidelity and a long lie, and both understood that this was the best way to a new beginning for both of us. The decision to divorce meant not only emotional separation, but also the inevitable division of property. We both wanted justice and respect for each other, despite how our history turned out. Negotiations on the division of property were not easy. We had to determine what would happen to our home, a place where we spent many happy and unhappy days. I felt like I owned most of the house since John cheated on me and kicked me out of it. The trial was a difficult experience, but finally we reached an agreement. The house became my property, but I decided to give John some time to find a new place to live. In the meantime, I decided to return to what was my passion, art. I started taking art courses and investing time and energy into it. It helped me forget about the pain of betrayal and restore my inner balance. When John finally found a new place to live, I helped him with the move. Our daughter stayed with me, but we agreed to take care of her together. With each new day, I found myself more and more and built my life anew. My divorce from John gave me a freedom I hadn't been able to enjoy for years. It was a time of self-search and rethinking. I continued to make art and even started selling my works. It became not only my way of earning money, but also a way to express myself and share my feelings with others. My daughter was growing up, and we spent a lot of time together, creating special moments and restoring our lost ties. I tried to give her self-confidence and teach her that even after difficult trials, you can find the strength and move forward. As the years went by, I met new friends and created my own supportive network. They helped me regain my lost trust in people and taught me to value myself. John, in turn, was also moving forward. He realized that his betrayal was a big mistake and that he had to change. He started learning how to be a better father and person. Our daughter became his main inspiration for personal growth. Despite all the disappointments and pains, our story remained a bond between us because we had a daughter together. We both decided to work on joint parenting and support each other in this difficult process. Every new day brought me new opportunities and hopes. I realized that even after the most difficult trials, you can find strength inside yourself and move forward, building a new life story. Several years have passed since our divorce, and life has moved forward, transforming and developing. I remained on my path of self-search and self-development, and although our daughter was a top priority for me, I understood that my own needs and ambitions were also important. John, in turn, tried to reconnect with me after his affair with Laura ended. She left him, and he realized that he had lost a lot. He apologized and claimed that he understood his mistakes and was now ready to change for our family. But I had already been through a lot, and my heart could no longer trust him completely. Although I appreciated his attempts to change and become a better person, I understood that it was better for me to stay in the past. Our paths had parted, and I didn't want to go back to the pain and betrayal. The decision to remain independent and build your own life was difficult, but liberating. I was ready to move forward and create my own story without a shadow of past mistakes and disappointments. My daughter remained my main source of happiness and motivation. I gave her all my care and love, and we grew up together, building new memories and moments of joy. The story I told turned out to be full of difficult twists, trials, and disappointments. It reflects the reality of many relationships that may be on the verge of collapse due to betrayal and distrust. The moral of this story is that even in the most difficult situations, you can find the strength to recover and rebirth. Betrayal can be devastating, but they can also serve as a catalyst for personal growth and a new beginning. It is important to remember that everyone is responsible for their actions and choices. Before you accuse another of treason, you should pay attention to your own actions and mistakes. In addition, sincere communication and willingness to forgive can help restore trust and relationships. Our stories can be confusing and difficult, but they can also shed light on our own strengths and abilities to move through dark times. Ultimately, life gives us a chance to start from scratch and create new stories of happiness and satisfaction.